Hey, it's that time of the year for my annual roundup of my favorite movies. This year is going to be a little bit different. I want to let you know this up front in case you just want to bail right out of this video. So the reason why is because 2022 turned out to just be a banner year for horror movies. Seriously, I've been an avid horror movie fan my entire life, and I can't remember a year that had this many fantastic entries. We are truly in a golden age of horror movies right now. So my list of favorite movies of the year has been completely dominated by horror films, and it just feels awkward trying to shoehorn in the non-horror movies that I really liked. So this is going to be my top 10 list of my favorite horror films. But if you're not a horror fan, before I send you on your way, I'd like to recommend 5 non-horror movies that I absolutely loved this year. First, check out Metal Lords. It's a funny, quirky, sweet movie about 2 teen boys with a passion for metal music and its culture. One is probably a bit more hyper-focused on the music, and a conflict arises when the other boy recruits a girl cello player to join the band. She's simply not metal enough, and the really serious boy fears that she's breaking up the band when a kind of a romance develops. It's a well-acted story, it's genuine, and it's just a super charming story. Next, everyone everywhere has to see Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's a crazy, mind-boggling adventure about a middle-aged woman who has to save the world by traveling through infinite parallel universes. And in the process, she finds a deeper meaning in her own life, as well as a chance to heal the relationship with her daughter. This is really the feel-good movie of the year. It's fast-paced and emotional with a lot of really laugh-out-loud moments. I just saw The Whale with Brendan Fraser this past weekend, and I think it's probably got to be the best performance of the year. It tells the story of a 600-pound man trying to reconcile his relationship with his estranged daughter. It's a single-location film with just 4 people in the main cast. If you're in a mood for a movie that'll sort of uplift you, but it'll really tear you apart, check out The Whale. It's pretty devastating. Marcel, the Shell with Shoes On, is a movie adapted from a couple of YouTube videos from 12 years ago. If you don't remember them, I'll try to remember to leave a link down in the description. Okay, so I got 2 feel-good movies of the year. Marcel is absolutely adorable. He's literally a shell with shoes on who goes in search of his family with the help of a documentary filmmaker making the movie that we're watching. Watch it with the whole family. I guarantee you'll get a lump in your throat and it'll put a huge smile on your face. Finally, The Northman is a masterpiece and my favorite non-horror film of the year. Robert Eggers has become one of my favorite directors. His first 2 films, The Witch and The Lighthouse, are 2 of my favorite movies ever. The Northman tells a simple story of a Viking prince on a quest to avenge his father's murderer. Robert Eggers is obsessed with hyper-realism in his films, and this movie is no exception. It's absolutely insane. Every detail is period accurate. Even the Viking ships were constructed with period accurate hand tools and accurate wood and joinery techniques. It was shot in Iceland using available light and authentic clothing. But beyond that, the story is intense. This is no Rings of Power. It gives you an actual feel for how utterly brutal life must have been in the 10th century. Let's just say the Vikings didn't take time to ponder their inner feelings while pillaging a town. It's pretty intense. Okay, so as you might know, I'm usually drawn to low-budget indie films, movies that are often the vision of a single person. Whenever I see written and directed by in the credits, I take notice. I love the surprises that you can discover with independent film. Big budget Hollywood films have so much money invested in them, they can't afford to really take any risks. As a result, they churn out safe, predictable factory art. It may sound kind of weird, but for the most part, like big budget blockbuster action movies tend to really bore me. I I have literally dozed off during car chases. Studio productions can also spend millions of dollars on their actors, something that small films can't do. So I would never criticize the acting in a micro-budget movie. I absolutely love the rough edges and admire the actors and the crew making movies because they love making movies. Okay, with all that said, now on to my top 10 list of 2022 horror films. Again, this was an unprecedented year and I ended up with 25 films in my favorite movies folder, and it was really hard to whittle it down and rank my top 10. So here we go. First, I should start out with a couple of runners up. Honorable mentions, movies that almost made my list, but before that, I want to talk about Barbarian because I think it sort of stands on its own. I've seen it on a lot of people's top 10 horror lists, but I see it as much more of a thriller slash mystery than a horror film. It's definitely one of my favorite films of the year. It starts out with a woman who checks into an Airbnb late at night only to discover that it's already been rented out to somebody else, and the man there is kind of, he's a bit awkward, but it seems like he's almost being too nice. With no place else to go, the woman agrees to share the house until they can get it sorted out. But I guess the best part is she does all the right things. All of the decisions make perfect sense. It's one of those where you ask yourself, what would I do and how would I protect myself, and all these questions, and she seems to do all of that, which is nice to see in a movie. And you think that the movie is going in this one way with the creepy guy, only until the story takes a huge, totally unexpected turn, and just when you have sorted all of that out, you're thrown with a completely new twist. It's almost as if Barbarian shifts between genres, which is why it was hard for me to put it on my horror list. But as you can tell, I haven't revealed anything past that first 30 minutes of the movie. That's the part that's in the trailer, because this movie is just so weird, unexpected, and fun. You have to experience Barbarian knowing as little as possible. Slashback is a breezy, lighthearted alien monster movie about a group of young girls who team up to save a tiny Arctic town 30 miles from the North Pole, which they call home. This is a thoroughly entertaining movie which takes place and was shot entirely in the Inuit hamlet of Pangnirtung, or Pang as the locals call it. And it was shot with an all Inuit cast. I love this glimpse into an isolated place that, from what I understand, can only be reached by plane or ship. There's no roads into the town. It takes place in the summer, so there's no darkness. So the story is aliens are taking over the bodies of some of the adults, and the girls gather up a bunch of makeshift weapons to defeat them. The film definitely draws a lot of inspiration from Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing. The practical effects are really cool and fun to watch. I think what I appreciate most about Slashback is that it's not trying to deliver any message or subtext. It's just plain fun. The movie is unrated, but I wouldn't hesitate to let kids watch it. Consider it the one and only family horror film on this list. Smile was way better than the trailer and marketing had me believing. Honestly, it looked like it was going to be a mid-2000s PG-13 horror movie about people who somehow go around with creepy smiles before killing you, but wow, this was a very thrilling movie. Turns out the smile part in the trailer and on the poster is actually just a small component of the movie. I think a rebrand of the marketing, even a change of the title, would have gone a long way for this film to reach more people. So Smile is about a therapist, Dr. Rose Cotter, who witnesses a bizarre incident involving a patient. Soon after, she starts to experience strange occurrences that she can't explain, which quickly cause her entire life to break apart. Is she experiencing hallucinations, or are these events real? As the story unfolds, Rose starts to unravel the mystery and uncover trauma from her own past. Smile is a lot scarier and heart-pounding than I expected. There's some great jump scares and some really creepy moments. 2022 saw yet another Texas Chainsaw movie, this time titled Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not to be confused with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1973 or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003, which is also a really good movie, or simply Texas Chainsaw from 2013, which was originally called Texas Chainsaw 3D. You with me? No, of course you're not. Nobody can fully comprehend this franchise. There's no timeline continuity or story thread running through Chainsaw movies, which is sort of what I like about them. Each film is its own thing, that it draws from previous film and establishes its own lore. This is the biggest mess of a franchise that exists. The only constants are going to be Leatherface and the chainsaw. Nothing else matters. In this year's film, Sally, the sole survivor from the original film, has come back to avenge the murders of her friends way back in 1973 and to finally get revenge on Leatherface. So it reminds me of Laurie Strode, huh? I guess Leatherface would probably be in his 70s now, but somehow he gets around and just kicks ass just fine. Doesn't matter, don't care, I just want to see Leatherface rampaging. Man, do we get to see it in this film. For the first time in 50 years, we finally get an actual chainsaw massacre, and it's just glorious. I mean, hey, as long as they keep cranking out Texas Chainsaw movies, I'm gonna be watching them. By the way, I wanted to mention this. If you are looking for the complete opposite, watch the Chucky franchise. Dan Mancini is the creator and has helmed the series since 1988. Every single film in this franchise, including the fantastic series that's currently running, is related. There is one consistent timeline that's been running and built upon for nearly 35 years. It's an amazing accomplishment that I'm pretty sure no other franchise can compare to. And if we're talking about TV shows, Chucky is my favorite show in years, except for Better Call Saul. Chucky is the most bonkers TV show I've ever seen. Absolutely hilarious, filthy, gory. It's just what I want from that foul-mouthed little doll. It's self-aware, it references the franchise itself. Chucky breaks the fourth wall. Jennifer Tilly plays herself as well as Tiffany, Chucky's doll bride. And I mean, I could go on and on about how mind-blowing this all is to me. Again, this is all tied into all 7 of the movies with all of the same actors. Even Alex Vincent, who played Andy, the 6-year-old boy in the original Child's Play movie, is back along with Kyle, Brad Dourif, Jennifer Tilly. I mean, I can't get over what an achievement the Chucky franchise is. One guy in charge, keeping a consistent storyline. Okay, now let's get into my top 10 favorite horror films of 2022. Christmas, Bloody Christmas is an instant Christmas classic. A Robo-Santa is on the loose and hacking people to bits. And that's pretty much it. I was anxiously awaiting this movie. Joe Begos is one of my favorite directors. Previous movies that have made my top 10 lists include Bliss and VFW. Joe Begos has a very distinct look and style to his films, with lots of colorful lighting, jarring camera movements, and definitely a metal vibe to them. The soundtracks always kick ass, but what he does best is establish believable characters with natural, honest dialogue. He takes his time in usually about the first half hour of each film to fully flesh out the characters and why we want to root for them. In Christmas, Bloody Christmas, it's the relationship between record store owner Tori and her co-worker Robbie. They have to have improvised most of this dialogue, the way they riff on their favorite Christmas movies and songs. It just feels really authentic. There's great practical effects and a bunch of great kills. It's a frantic, loud, bloody movie. Just what you want for Christmas. In 2009, a really good movie called Orphan was released. It was about a couple who adopt a 9-year-old girl who wreaks havoc on the family. It's an absolutely fantastic movie with a great twist ending. Isabel Fuhrman, who played Esther, the orphan, was 12 at the time, which isn't unusual. It's not unusual to cast kind of small, older kids to play younger ones. Okay, now follow me on this. This year, 2022, we were treated to another Orphan movie, Orphan First Kill. Now get this, It's a prequel with Isabel Fuhrman playing the same character, only this time even younger. She's literally a 25-year-old actress playing the role of an 8-year-old, and somehow they managed to pull it off. It's utterly ridiculous, and it's kind of amazing at the same time. Orphan, First Kill tells the story of how Esther managed to escape an Estonian psychiatric facility and make her way to the US. You might be asking yourself, why is an 8-year-old girl locked up in a mental institution? Well, knowing the twist ending from the first film will help, but for the most part, you just gotta go with it and you'll enjoy the ride. But like the first film, this one also has a twist, only this time it comes halfway through the movie that just makes it extra sleazy. So to the point where now you really want to root for this devious, murderous little Esther. Well, sort of, I don't know. The fact that this film got made, though, really makes me happy. I've been a David Cronenberg fan since the early 1980s. I saw Videodrome several times during the single week that it played at a local theater. He is the undisputed king of body horror with movies such as Scanners, The Fly, Crash, Dead Ringers, and more. In recent years, he's kind of gotten away from these types of movies, so Crimes of the Future was hotly anticipated by lots of us in the horror community. It promised a return to Cronenberg's body horror roots, and I think it delivered. It takes place in a not too distant future where humans are experiencing some kind of accelerated evolution and adapting to a synthetic environment. As a result, people are developing new internal organs. Saul and his wife Caprice are performance artists who hold underground surgical performances, surgically removing these new organs for curious audiences to watch. The problem is Saul is finding it more and more difficult and even painful to eat and live life normally. There's a subculture of people who eat plastics, and it wouldn't be a Cronenberg film without an ominous corporation and a government conspiracy. And like many of his films, I don't fully understand it. I'll need to watch it a couple more times. The performances are all really good, especially Viggo Mortensen. Kristen Stewart also has a quirky, memorable role. If you like old school body horror, and especially if you like films like Videodrome and Existenz, you'll like this one. Not Cronenberg's best, but still a good return to his dark and depressing motifs and atmospheres. We're All Going to the World's Fair is an impressive debut by director Jane Schoenbrunn. The film it's really more of a meditation than a traditional story. It's about a teenage girl who decides to take the World's Fair Challenge. It's an online role-playing horror game that seems to be causing people to do odd things. She spends her whole life watching YouTube videos, making her own videos, and live streaming to an audience of a handful of people. At one point, an older, kind of creepy man reaches out to her, wanting to help her avoid the dangers the challenge seems to have brought upon her. I've seen this movie a couple of times, and I'm not really sure why I'm drawn to it so much, but I am. Maybe because it's so open-ended. It allows every viewer to take from it what they will. I love the plotting pacing of the film. It sort of reminds me of Werner Herzog's Nosferatu from 1978. You'll know if it's right for you in the first 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, which is just a single static webcam shot of Casey taking the World's Fair Challenge. That's the pace of the entire movie. Overall, the film is a slice of life commenting on the desperation of people whose entire lives are spent online and how it changes us physically and mentally. Anna Cobb, who plays Casey, gives an impressive performance, basically carrying the entire movie on her shoulders. It's quite moving to hear her say, "I swear, someday soon I'm just gonna disappear and you won't have any idea what happened to me." Great music by Alex G too. Hatching is a crazy body horror film from Finland about Tina, a girl who finds an egg in the woods behind her house, and she takes care of it, nurturing it, not knowing what's lurking inside. and what the hatching may become. What might have been a routine monster movie turns into something much more as Tina makes decisions that will affect her family and friends, especially regarding her weird, overbearing mother. And then, just when you think you've got the story figured out, it just goes for it and becomes a nightmare of body horror. Not unlike Cronenberg. It's just Cronenberg with an upper middle class family. No movie seemed to polarize horror fans more this year than Rob Savage's Dashcam, his follow-up movie to my #1 pick for 2020, Host. This one is a found footage film which follows Annie Hardy in her live stream band car where she drives around LA freestyle improv rapping lyrics that viewers post in the chat. Annie is a right-wing MAGA cap wearing anti-vaxxer, and this all takes place during peak pandemic lockdown. She makes her way to England to meet up with her friend and ex-bandmate Stretch, who's making ends meet as a DoorDash driver. They end up spending an insanely fast-paced, horrific night chased by some sort of mutant blood-sucking killers as Annie live streams the whole terrifying ordeal with her phone and a GoPro. The polarizing part of the movie among viewers comes down to Annie Hardy, who plays kind of an exaggerated version of herself, who really does have a live stream called Bandcar. People absolutely hate this character. Someone who is just completely obnoxious and reprehensible and represents kind of the worst of the lockdown. But honestly, I gotta say, she's kind of funny too. I guess a lot of the people who despise Dashcam, from what I gather, seem to hate it mostly because they hate the protagonist, which to me raises the question, is it okay to have the lead character, the protagonist of a movie, be somebody that you dislike? I'd say there's certainly precedents. I'm thinking of Alex from A Clockwork Orange, who was also a horrible individual. And this comes down to what exactly is a horror movie. I think horror films are best when they make you uncomfortable. They need to be at least a little bit transgressive, and I've never seen a character like Annie before, and by the end I actually warmed up to her. Plus I found her kind of endearing. Plus I also love found footage flicks. Oh, and you gotta stick around for her improv rapping the credits. And while we're talking about found footage films, one of the best in recent years is Deadstream, a comedy horror featuring a completely likable main character. Sean is a disgraced YouTuber who's trying to make a comeback after being canceled for some sort of indiscretion. He decides to win back his subscribers by spending the night in a supposed haunted house. He live streams the entire event and manages to piss off a real ghost who is out for vengeance. Deadstream is a really good look at internet culture, especially as a creator and the links that people go to in order to remain relevant. This is a very funny movie with great special effects and gore, lots of surprises. Another thing it does really well is justify the constant live streaming and have it all make sense. Joseph Winter, who is also the writer and director of Deadstream, plays Sean in such a way that at first he kind of comes off as one of those annoying, hey guys, kind of YouTuber, but it doesn't take long for you to warm up to his innocent, charming, kind of naive personality. You'll absolutely love this protagonist and thoroughly root for him to survive, and it's presented in a way that seems totally legit from a YouTube perspective. Most films don't quite get YouTube culture and its sponsorships and the audience relationships, and for the most part, this one gets it right. I have two films in my #3 spot because I can't decide which one I like better. X and Pearl were both released this year and each had a budget of $1 million, which is considered a micro budget. Compare that to the newest Avatar, which cost $250 million. Which movie is willing to take chances and tell a compelling, thought-provoking story? Set in the 1970s, X tells the story of a group of young filmmakers who set out to make a porn movie in rural Texas. They rent a place from an elderly couple who discover what they're doing and go on a bloody rampage. The tension is unbearable in X. X is a damn good slasher mystery movie, as well as a commentary on aging and how generations might clash, but all have the same desires. The acting is absolutely top-notch. Mia Goth as the lead, giving an amazing dual role that I didn't realize was a dual role until the credits rolled. And if you stayed to the end, you were treated to a teaser of Pearl, a prequel to X. Apparently, as Ty West, the director, was shooting X, he contacted A24, the producer and distributor, and told them, hey, this movie is turning out really good. I've been writing a prequel with Mia Goth. We've already got these sets made. Do you want us to go ahead and shoot it? And A24 was like, yeah, man, do it. So in the same year, we got Pearl, this time telling the story of Pearl, who was the old lady from X who rented out their barn for the porn shoot. This time, it takes place in 1918, and Pearl is a young woman with aspirations of leaving her parents' farm and becoming a star in Hollywood. With her husband off fighting in the war, she succumbs to all sorts of temptations and ambitions. When things don't go according to her plans, she has a bit of a mental breakdown, to say the least. In some ways, I like Pearl better than X. In fact, it's got a higher rating on IMDb, where X seems to want to tell a more conventional horror story. Pearl is more psychological, diving deep into Pearl's deeply unhinged mental state. And the ending is amazing. Mia Goth deserves an Oscar for this performance, but the Academy is a tired, old, stodgy institution that considers horror films low-class garbage, which is actually fine with me because I like the fact that horror films remain on the periphery. It's usually when they go mainstream that they kind of lose their edge. Oh, we got the top two here. Okay, coming in at number 2 is Terrifier 2. Like I just mentioned, good horror needs to be transgressive, and Terrifier 2 is about as grimy and uncomfortable as they come. It definitely reminds me of some of the grindhouse movies of the early 80s, movies that make you squirm and make you uncomfortable in your seat. I believe some of the best horror films ever produced have been in this past decade, challenging movies with thought-provoking messages and themes. But with this, a lot of films have become more sanitized. They're psychologically disturbing, but with fewer jump scares, less gore and terror in an attempt to make elevated horror. Slashers have been out of fashion for years, decades really. And this is why I believe Terrifier 2 is an important film in the history of horror. It represents a possible return to movies that don't care about appealing to a wide audience and aim to give hardcore horror fans a hardcore experience. Terrifier 2 is the sequel to Damien Leone's 2016 low-budget slasher Terrifier, which told a bare-bones story of a creepy clown who kills people. The fun was in the extremely graphic, extremely shocking ways in which he killed people. Damien Leone is a special effects artist himself, and in addition to writing and directing, he created all of the practical effects. This time, the Art the Clown lore is expanded on. There's much more of a story than the first film. Plus, it's got some really funny moments. Terrifier 2 gives fans exactly what we've been wanting in a sequel 10 times over. There's a 15-minute or so set piece of one particular murder that everyone will find disturbing and hard to watch. In fact, the buzz was that a lot of people were walking out of the movie theater. This, of course, became a challenge to people, especially to a lot of young people, a challenge to watch Terrifier 2, probably the most gruesome movie many of them have ever seen. So it became kind of like a viral hot pepper eating challenge. Can you sit through the Terrifier 2? Of course, that's really good for marketing too. Terrifier 2 was crowdfunded and shot for a budget of $250,000, and the director insisted that it be shown in some limited theaters. So get this, a micro-budget film that you probably never heard of caught a lot of word of mouth and went viral at theaters, playing maybe one show a day or at midnight screenings. But it went on to make over $14 million over the next few weeks. I think the horror community is ready for a return to some hardcore, horrific horror. And finally, my favorite movie of the year was Hellbender. I love everything about this movie, including the story behind it. The movie is made entirely by John Adams, Toby Poser, and their two daughters, Zelda and Lulu. The Adams family shot Hellbender basically in their backyard and funded it themselves. It's a collaborative process, even to the point of writing this script as they're going and letting the story unfold as they make the movie. They take turns behind the camera, and the whole family is in the cast. John edited the movie himself, and Toby and Zelda wrote and performed the soundtrack. Hellbender tells the story of a mom and her daughter living in a secluded home deep in the mountains. As Izzy, the daughter, gets older, she starts to get curious about the outside world and begins to unravel the truth behind what kind of humans she and her mother really are. Are they witches? Well, sort of. They're hellbenders. This is a moody, atmospheric film with performances that feel raw and real, especially with mother and daughter playing mother and daughter. Like many of the films on this list, the Addams Family represent the best that independent films have to offer. Hellbender is a 100% uncompromising vision made by people passionate about their craft who have a burning desire to tell stories their way. This is art with all of its rough edges exposed. By the way, if you're interested in hearing more about the Addams Family, check out the conversation I had with them on my podcast, The WTS. There's a link down in the description. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really hope you'll check out some of these films and especially support independent film. I think it's important.